I think that a foreign policy debate, the third in the series, with the race so close, can be a good arena for the airing of big visions and the manifestation of judgment or character. I think that instead what it turned out to be was a question of plausibility. Was Romney plausible as a commander-in-chief? That's what he was trying to show. He wasn't interested in taking risks, in trying to sell a vision of what the world would look like under a Romney presidency. What he was interested in doing was just showing that he could do the job. And I think that really suggests something else that was also a subtext in the way that Obama came out of the box and aggressively attacked Romney's foreign policy, and the way that Romney essentially clung to Obama's foreign policy, is that what you had there was the challenger, Romney, feeling that he was actually in pretty good shape, and if he just didn't make a mistake, the wind was at his back and he could win this. And Obama playing a kind of offense that signaled a defensiveness on his own part, that he actually had to find a way to stop Romney. And I think that tells you more about the nature of the campaign at the moment, that it's very close, but the trend appears to be with Romney, than it tells you about what the foreign policies of these two candidates are going to be like. The bottom line, however, is that in a country that is deeply polarized over domestic issues, there isn't really a great deal of difference between the two candidates or even the two parties when it comes to foreign policy. I think what we saw in both candidates last night was an attempt not just to appeal to their bases, but much more to appeal to the voters that they needed to get support from. So, for example, Obama spoke about Israel repeatedly. He was the first to bring up Israel. He spoke about his trip to Israel. Of course, there's a lot of criticism for him not going to Israel as president, so he spoke about how he went as candidate. And Romney, on the other hand, seemed to be appealing to other constituencies, when in particular he pushes this line about building more ships. That seems to be a specific appeal to Virginia, where most of the Navy ships are built. So each of the candidates was playing to a constituency where they had some vulnerability or they needed to try to win them over. And in that sense, no surprise, it was a very political debate in terms of, rather than being a discussion about the nuances of foreign policy, it was much more focused on positioning and appealing. And that's why both of them were quite happy to pivot away from foreign policy back to the issue of the economy, because they could both make the point that we needed to be strong at home to be strong abroad, but then it came back to the question of who would do a better job on the economy, which is really the heart of the election. I actually thought that they spent very little time on China, that for much of the debate, I think it was something like 45 minutes, they remained stuck in the quagmire of the Middle East. And what is interesting about Romney in that regard is that in terms of the substance of the foreign policy that he's promoting, not just last night, but in his latest foreign policy speech, you see a desire to double down in the Middle East, whereas Obama's policy is to withdraw the troops from the Middle East. He ended the war in Iraq, he's ending the war in Afghanistan, and he wants to pivot to Asia and really focus on Asia much more than the Middle East. One issue that didn't get raised at all last night was the fact that the United States, in the next president's term, will not be dependent at all on Middle Eastern oil. And without troops there and with no dependence on Middle Eastern oil, that changes the dynamic. Of course, there's still Iran, there's still the commitment to Israel, but it changes the degree to which we need to be vested in the Middle East. And Romney doesn't seem to be willing to accept that logic, whereas Obama is I think, much more interested in kind of getting out of there and building the relationship with China and a whole new strategy towards Asia.